Hey everyone, welcome to More Than Numbers, a live show focused on turning data teams from support functions into engines of growth. My name is Mico Yuk. I am the host of the Analytics on Fire podcast, but today I am taking over More Than Numbers show and interviewing your host, Ollie Hughes. So just for some context, if you're not familiar with Count is a canvas-based BI tool that breaks data teams away from just building dashboards and turns them into organizations' problem solvers. As I stated, this is a data takeover. Okay. I'm interviewing
Right.
the Ollie Hughes. Ollie, how are you?
It's very weird having you repeat that intro. Thank you for doing this. That's very good.
I did my best. I know everybody saw a customer seeing you, but hey, I gave it a good shot.
You did a really good job. Did a really good job. Don't do it too well, right? Don't do it too
Yeah.
well.
No, you do a great job. Okay, guys. So today's a very exciting show because what we're going to talk about today is I know if you guys have been following More Than Numbers live, you've seen Oli interviewing amazing guests, right? And if you haven't checked it out, I was a guest, thank you. But he also has had leaders from Monzo, from Bumble. Like, go back and check out mtn.co. Wait, no, I may get it wrong. Don't quote me. Count.co/MTN. I will put the link in the comments. There we go. Thank you. Be sure to go back and check it out, but don't leave us yet. We have an exciting show today that is really going to be focused around the tenets of Count. So I want to jump into what that is, Oli. But before we get started, for people who don't know you, because there's always new people watching the show, Oli is not just my birthday twin, but he is an amazing founder, guys. And I've worked with a lot of founders in the data space, and he's very passionate. So this show is a little bit different because as opposed to him talking to data leaders, his passion about these tenets are going to come out, and I'm just honored to interview. So Oli, let's put you on the spot and start with a question that you always ask. What was your first BI tool?
My first BI tool. Thank you, Mico, firstly for doing this for me. It's really great to have you here and be in the hot
Fun.
seat for once. Good humility for me to be here as a guest. The first BI tool. So interesting story. Obviously,
Not
uh,
Excel.
not Excel. Obviously not.
Mhm.
No. So my first like proper data tool that I used a lot was actually in Tesco. If you don't know Tesco, it's one of Europe's largest retailers,
Mhm.
and
I
they
do.
had back in the time like their own on-prem Teradata data warehouse, like properly like servers sitting there in head
Old
office,
school.
like wearing away old school. And so actually my
Yeah.
first tool I loved was just interrogating that database. It was pretty cool. Like just had so much stuff. Like Tesco, any retailer generally has amazing data set because you've got like human behavior, matched operations. It's a really fun data set to play with. So that was definitely the place where I fell in love with data most. Did a lot of cool projects there. Tesco's a great data led organization. Then the story really about BI, like properly a kind of a dashboarding tool. This is gonna I don't like slamming other tools particularly, but I after Tesco I ended up doing consulting, working with clients with Power BI, and Power BI
Oh,
had just come out, and I was like playing around with it, and I then I
it's rough.
I
It's rough.
walked into DAX, and I was like, DAX, what is this language, which is sort of like some sort of bastardized version of an Excel formula, makes no sense, horrible to learn. This
Yeah.
cannot be the future. How can this be in the newest BI tool on the market and done by Microsoft, which is obviously a pretty good product organization? And I was like, this is going the wrong way. And that was kind of one of the things that kicked off Ollie and I, my co-founder, thinking about Count and trying to find a different answer. It was like, thank you, Power BI, for giving me the impetus to believe I could find something better to build. So there you go. There's
Yeah,
the
and
backstory.
I was a Power BI MVP for a number of years, so I'm a little bit biased. I will say that that was before they were. I think you used it before they had fully been acquired by maybe Microsoft because Microsoft did acquire them. People don't know that, and
Oh,
so yeah, they weren't acquired too. A lot of people don't realize that because Microsoft just did like the branding. Obviously, it's all Microsoft, and I think Microsoft has done a lot of work since then. So while it's not a perfect tool, I was just telling someone in LinkedIn the other day.
you back out of it, but you and I both know what I'm saying is true. But you play that
Yeah,
story.
I'm just saying it's the iPad of BI, okay? It's basically pick it up, anybody with any knowledge or no knowledge can use it. And I think that was the point. Whether or not it is the de facto and the default, that's a different conversation. Okay, so let me just go ahead and take my Power BI plaque. I remember that I used to be an MVP. Let's move on from that. Okay, so Power BI. Okay, Oli, so let's get into this. So I mentioned about the Count tenants, and you basically baptized me in these when I used to work for Count. Okay, and I was sold. So what I'm hoping to do is have you basically kind of explain why you feel so passionate today about data teams being support functions, essentially, and them needing to instead be, I believe you said, growth engines for the business, right?
Yeah, sure.
Or the right. So let's just foundation, like what is the problem that you're trying to solve? And why is it important?
Thank you. I mean, yeah, I can talk about this for a long time, so you're gonna rein me in if I go too far. But in general, I
It's
just
fine.
think that as an industry, we're at a really, really critical moment, right? We're
Yeah.
now at a point where we've gone past the ZERP zero interest world where capital was free and data teams could spend. And we're now at a point where
Yeah.
data teams, for many reasons, one is they just need to prove their ROI with the money they have. There's not infinite budgets, but also now
Yes.
with the AI revolution, which is going to come and make a big impact, there's this need for data teams to step up their game and just become much more valuable in the way they work. And instead, what I see is data teams struggling in this kind of service trap, this support function mode where they want to drive more value,
Mm.
they want to be more at the core of driving the business forwards, but instead they're stuck being this kind of dashboard factory, and they're trying to break out of that. Um, and it is a thing I want to fix. Things like we not everyone's in data not to become a dashboard builder, but to solve problems. That's the general core principle that every single person I've spoken to in data over a decade wants to solve problems. And instead, they're building charts and dashboards. And it's how do you break out of that trap? What can we do as an industry to move that forwards? And that's where the whole idea of the tenants came from. Is like, well, actually, what's the value framework, which is not about
Yeah.
how to be, not makes it not transactional, but instead makes it a ambitious vision for what a dead team should be doing and focusing on, and actually is the levers of value for them. That's the whole idea of this project. And that's what I've been passionate about with the tenants.
And I completely agree. And it's so funny why you're saying that, even though we didn't plan this. You, if you go on LinkedIn right now, you could type in dashboard developer. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of roles, right? And what you don't see sometimes, a lot of times in those roles, if you scope them only, is you don't see problem solving, right? You see analysts, you see all this stuff. So I like the fact that you are kind of distinguishing the fact that like the industry is calling for someone to be like, and we used to call it chart monkeys, just bill. You are focusing on what we actually are supposed to be doing. I was an analyst myself and data scientist, which is solving problems. Okay,
Yeah,
so I want to dig a little bit deeper. Let's peel the onion a little bit more. So in terms
yeah,
of
sure.
like in terms of like this pivotal time, and I agree with you, like in this Gen AI age, right? A lot of people are like, am I gonna be replaced? Why is this moment so pivotal? What are the issues that data teams are facing that they need to start to address or be replaced?
Well, that's it. There's two big waves here. One is there is now less budget. The ZERP's over. We need to get more value from what we have, and data teams need to react to that and become more. There's more pressure to become more impactful. And the second thing is
Yes.
if we stay transactional and stay as a kind of support function, just providing the data the business wishes for without any other value driver, that is a function which will be replaced by a machine. Like I just believe that's the case.
I
I
agree.
mean, there's a much higher value operating model that any team can move to, which is far more driven to value, far more has a higher level of value attached to it than just the one who can write SQL and build a bar chart, which we can get data teams to, and they need to get there because otherwise they will be replaced by a machine. And it's also just not. It's also, as I said, no one finds satisfaction in being a chart builder. It's about the problem solve, and let's get people there. Now's the time to make that shift. Is basically the principle. And I
And I'm
basically
agreeing. Sorry, go ahead.
no, yeah, I think in general, my vision of this is like that big vision is that
Yeah.
BI is no longer about just getting data into the business. There's enough data there already. BI used to be about just get data into the business to drive value. That
Yeah.
kind of was generation one. We've been through that age. Now it's about, my view is BI should be about business improvement. Like the goal of a data team now is to drive business improvement, and BI should stand for business improvement. We need to make the business better. We no longer need to serve the data to the business, and that's it. That is the thing that needs to become a commodity. And I think you can see the market actually, making it a commodity. AI is going to make it a
Yes.
commodity. So data teams need to shift to becoming like the drivers, the facilitators of business improvement, and that's the role I believe we can move to. I'm seeing our customers move to.
And I love that because the two things I'm hearing is transformation to problem solvers and focus on business improvement versus support function. And I think if you put those two together, which you're going to tell us shortly in the show, that is where we get that transformation. Now, I wanted to jump in a little bit deeper because if I'm listening to this, let's peel it on you one more time, and I'm a data leader, data team. I'm sitting down thinking, well, Oli, how do I know if I'm a support function, right? It's not just about am I billable, am I not? So I know that you have an amazing kind of like service trap. Can we get that slide up? An amazing service, like 4 symptoms of a service, to see if your data team is a service trap or not. Could you kind of expound on this? Because I just thought, this just gets to the heart of it. It's either a yes or a no.
Yeah, I think so. Let's walk through the different the different service traps, and then how you can know if you're in that trap. These 4 things are actually, they all are linked. So we can talk about that kind of what we call the vicious cycle. But in general, there's 4 of them, right? So the first one, if you know you're in a service trap, if you are drowning the business with information, if the business is drowning with the amount of dashboards and assets and data that's available to them, and they can't see wood from the trees. And the symptom there, and a way to diagnose this, is look at your kind of dashboard to employee ratio. Like how many dashboards are there in the business, and how many employees do you have?
That's so good.
And is that, if that ratio is anywhere close to 1, or if it's not even like 1 to 10, then you've got every employee with a different version of the truth pulling in different directions, and it's causing confusion. That is an outcome of being in a service trap where you're just pumping information into the business. That's one of the service traps. The second one.
Before you move on to that service trap, Oli, I can hear someone in the audience saying, "But I have my gyro request for it or whatever, and I'm getting these requests over and over again. What am I supposed to do?"
We'll come to that. I
know we're going to solution, but I hear it echoing in the audience.
Yeah. No, you're going to hear it, and we'll get to that. There is a solution to that problem, and it's actually about breaking the cycle. And we'll come. That's the vicious cycle of like, the more they ask, the more information they get, the more overwhelmed they are. You need to solve that problem. How do you make the business feel simple, not feel drowned in information and different versions of the truth? So we'll dig into that more. And that links to the second service trap, which is answering every question the business has. So there's a real subtlety here, which is the business is often, wonderfully hungry for data. They know the power of it, and they keep wanting to get more data to answer more questions. The problem is, if you are their quick fix, if you give them the information they're asking for, you are commoditizing your value by just giving the numbers they're asking for, and you're just the SQL interpreter rather than being the problem solver for them. And that's a big problem too, right? So if you're overwhelmed with ad hoc requests, there's a drug the business is on here, which is getting information from you. It costs them nothing to ask and costs you a lot to give. And you need to be much more discerning than that just to give information away. And so that's the second trap, which is often linked to the first one, which is if they're asking for information, you're giving it to them. There's a vicious cycle of like building more confusion. Therefore, they want more requests to understand what's going on. And that's a vicious cycle of just building, answering, and it doesn't get any better. And we call it the vicious cycle. That's what you're trying to break. That's a really important point.
It used to be known as the data treadmill, the data requirement treadmill.
Exactly.
Yeah, it used to be the data requirement treadmill. Yeah. Okay, continue.
So those two are really linked together. And then when things get tough, there's a real temptation for the data team to sort of retreat back behind and like pull the drawbridge up of the castle and just protect themselves, and that leads to other big problems. So the third service trap is the idea of like minimizing time with stakeholders, like the idea of let's put up a process, let's get the ticketing window up so we can retreat away. There's an interface to deal with us. You don't really know what's going on, but also we don't know what this is doing either. And then that makes things even worse because then the data team is not as well informed about business priorities. They're not in the business context. You're even more like a black box where you can put a number in and the machine gives an answer back. And that makes it even more like an AI bot in the way you're working. So that's the third trap, is to minimize time away.
Just to insert there, it's prep disguised as protection, isn't it? Right. So it's protection disguised as prep. So you're claiming that, I want them to become prepared, when what you're really doing is a CYA, right? You're kind of creating this distance.
Yeah, exactly. Creating distance, and that with understandable need to protect yourself from like just all the bombardment of requests and being treated like a machine. But in reality, you're not actually leaning in to be more valuable to the business and be able to discern what really matters. And that's another failure mode you can fall into. It's hard to get out of once you're in that
cycle.
Position.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle.
Yes. And then the other temptation, again, which falls out of this feeling that like the business doesn't really value us, is to start to optimize things that don't really matter. The business can't even see. The number of times that I've seen data teams who spend more than half their time just maintaining operational reporting or maintaining data quality because they can control that stuff. and they want to make it even better, or they want to over optimize query performance because they know that that's going to
That's
drive
right.
that they can control it, they can justify a saving or an efficiency, but the business doesn't care, doesn't see that work, doesn't even know it's
What I
happening.
understand. Yep. Comfort zone. This is it's called data comfort food.
Data comfort food, exactly. So this is the natural response as you're feeding the business more information. It's getting confused. There's more demand on you to clarify.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah, yeah.
vicious cycle of the data, as you call it, a treadmill. I love that phrase. But
Mhm.
then you've also got this other temptation to just retreat back and do the things that you can control, like server costs or optimizing queries, or just
Yeah.
like putting up a kind of a booth that they can come to, which they can their ticketing system to get to you, which is exactly how as a machine would look. And that this is the trap that you can fall into, and this is when the business doesn't value you, you become commoditized. We've got to break out of that mode, and that's the default mode actually of a data team, and it's working a different way.
Okay.
That's the way these tools, our BI tools, are set up to support, which is why it's a problem.
Question for you. So you presented 4 service traps, which I think is great because these are symptoms that I'm sure people in the audience are going, I'm either 1 or 4 of these. How many of these do you have to check a box for to realize that you are literally just a I don't want to say useless support function, but you are caught in these service traps? Is it 2 of 4? Like how many? Is it 1 of 4 means you're heading down the trail? How many? How many symptoms?
I think one. I think if you
One.
have one of these problems,
Wow.
if you have one of these problems, if you don't address it, you can fall in. It exacerbates the rest, right? That's the challenge. So let's go through. These are the 4 traps. Let's just remind each other what the 4 symptoms are to realize this. So if you have a dashboard to employee ratio close to 1, or way just way too many data assets out there, then you're drowning the business with information. That risks causing the treadmill to kick off. If you're spending all
Wait,
your yeah.
pause there. So to visualize this, if I'm Microsoft or I'm a big company like ServiceNow, I have 50,000 employees. You're saying if I have 50,000 plus reports, we need to draw pictures, quantify it, 50,000 plus reports or dashboard assets, something's wrong. That's what you're saying.
Or even approaching that many. If you've got thousands of reports out there, then there's a lot of information out there saying different things in different ways, and that's causing
Yeah.
confusion. Yeah.
You said 10 to 1, so 5,000 or more. Okay, just want to quantify it. Move on to number 2.
So number 2 is obviously then if you as a team just feel overwhelmed with ad hoc requests left, right, and center, that is a symptom of you being a answer machine for the company rather than being a kind of something much more valuable to them. That you're commoditized answer machine. We'll come up to the solution what that looks like instead, but that is another a symptom that you can feel of being in a service trap. So again, that's a key thing to think about. Am I just feeling overwhelmed with this treadmill of ad hoc requests coming to me?
And I want to add here, this one here, sorry, I'm just inserting because we need to draw pictures. This insert in here, in my opinion, Ollie, and keep me honest, is Gen AI can answer questions faster than you, right? So the reality of this one is that this is a race that you're going to lose.
So race you're going to lose. AI can be a solution. Don't get me wrong. There's obviously part of this is how to enable self-service, but it's as we know, as anyone will know who's been in data world for a long time, there's a graveyard of self-service initiatives, and you never get the perfect self-service. You're always going to be asked for more information as a data team. It's just whether that information is valuable or not. We'll come to that in a bit more detail. You need to make sure that you have a way to not just answer questions, but actually lean into the problems which matter most and prioritize your effort there. That's obviously
agreed.
I think that's the thing which is probably least surprising for our audience to hear. It's just how you get there, right? And then the third symptom, like if you're spending most of your time on supporting data quality, if your team as a whole is spending more than 40% of its time like maintaining operational reports and dashboards or fixing data quality issues, that is too much time spent on things which aren't you're spending too much time away from stakeholders. Basically, you're not working on things that matter most. So that's really important, right? Too.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And then you have the last one. Oh, and can I ask a question there? When we were doing the prep, you mentioned an acid test that I thought was so good, right? You said, can your exec name 3 things that the data teams do to drive business value in that last quarter? And if I'm correct, you said if they cannot answer you, can you expand on that? Because I just thought to drive this in, that is such a good acid test.
I agreed. So this is what it all comes down to. Ultimately, the minimum bar that people often ask me. Last week, someone asked me this question, like, what's the way to measure ROI? And it's a hard question. We all want to have a number for it, but it's a hard one. And I said that it's a kind of one of those paradoxes that the data teams who are driving value are never asked to prove their ROI. It's so obvious that they're needed and they're so obviously driving value that they don't need to put a number to it. The teams who are being asked that question are the ones in trouble. And I said the minimum bar that you should be aspiring to as a data team, as a minimum, is that every quarter your executive team can clearly point to 3 things that the data team has done for the organization, which has driven business value. It could be indirectly driven it or absolutely led it from the front, but that they know that you're there and that they know that you've been contributing towards 3 key outcomes that matter. And that should be the bare minimum a data team should be doing. And if you're not doing that, if you can't point to that, then you need to make sure that's more visible. You need to be working on things that the organization can see. And that's the key thing, is like the business values you and they understand what you're doing, and you're not seen as a commoditized support function. That's the minimum bar in my mind.
I think the golden nugget there, Ollie, thank you for that, is that to me, that's the data team NPR.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what it is. Very simple. People ask you, you just say, NPR, for those who don't know that, the sales metric of like, would you recommend my business, right? There's a whole history behind that question. To me, what you're suggesting is the data team NPR. If an exec or 2 can answer this question, you don't need to ask any other questions.
And if you want to go back and learn more about that, like Lena from Bumble did an amazing job of giving us a way to do that kind of survey to get some of that.
Yeah.
But the key is that it's not just that someone in marketing values you, but that's a very important score, but actually does the exec team, as the people who make the decisions, understand the value of data. That's where you've got to make sure you're delivering to. So there's a whole company-wide spectrum there.
Yeah, and you can, just so you know, you guys can go again to count.co/MTN. All of the shows are there. If you type in Lena, if you go in the show notes on the bottom, yes, thank you. You'll be able to see that download. I recommend it. I think it's a stakeholder survey. It's plug and play. You can implement what Ollie is saying right now, get your asset test done and figure out what's going on. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the problem and we've talked a lot about the vicious cycle. I think it's safe to say that MTN is clear now. So let's now get into my favorite part, which is the solution. Because to be honest, these 4 tenets, and as someone these are what got me hooked with Count, right? Like this way of thinking, it's a way of working and thinking, right? It's not just a tool. It's not just so let's talk a little bit now about the Count tenets, which, if I'm correct, it directly one-to-one addresses each of the service traps. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. We've built a business around this. We have interviewed hundreds of data leaders. We've worked through the ones which are really driving impact, are the ones that never get asked their ROI. What are they doing? And then looking at what their principles of the way they work are. And we built the Count platform to make sure that is the way that any data team can work using Count. But it's a framework of value which applies to any data team. You can use it. You can start tomorrow. It's not just about one tool. It's about a way of working and a principle. And these are what I'm excited by. What I wish is that if you go into an organization and you ask, what does marketing do? Everyone knows what marketing does. Everyone knows the value that marketing brings. When you go into an organization and ask what the data team does, you get every company's a different answer to that question. As an industry, we need to have a definition of what a data team's role is, which is clear and is understood by the rest of the business, the rest of the industry. And we don't have that. We have like a very loose definition. So one of the many goals I have of these tenets is that I wish they are, if nothing else, they're just adopted by the data industry as a way to understand what the data team's value is. It's been wonderful to see so many data leaders and data teams taking these tenets and running with them on their strategy away days or building their annual strategy around these tenets, regardless if they can use it or not. Because they're just fundamental value drivers. They're principles. They're things that are principles you can keep working on them and getting better and better at. And that's what I love about them. They're kind of tried and tested. We know they work.
Yes.
They're good. They're good value principles. If you ever stuck, you go back to them. You can never end on these journeys. There's never a done thing. They're always true. Anyway.
Yeah, and I think. Yes, thank you for bringing it up. And I think the thing that's important before we dive into these here is that people need to understand that when we talk about, for those who are familiar with jobs to be done and deep work, right? Those are 2 phrases in the data industry that have become. To me, these are the actual jobs to be done and the deep work. And I see the Count canvas as a tool that enables you to do that. Other BI tools do not. So I just want to make that reference because I know that people in our data world understand it. Do you agree with that?
I do. I mean, as I said, I think BI tools, and BI tools, I mean like dashboard focused tools, where the paradigm is the ones that, we've had the BI tools around for decades. And even now, the newest BI tools adopt the fundamentally similar paradigm to what was
The
been
Three
around,
Stooges.
the Three Stooges. But even the newer tools adopt the Three Stooges. They just have slightly different flavors of the Three Stooges. And they're built to enable the operating model of the service traps. They are
I
built
agree.
that
I
way.
agree. Yes.
Now, you can use Count as a boring BI tool. You can build dashboards in Count.
I
That is
agree.
fine. But the key is that it unlocks a different way of working, that it unlocks a
Jobs to
way
be
of driving
done.
value and elevating above just the transactional dashboard factory way of working that exists today. And that's what really excites us, what we love doing and what we spent so many years trying to get right.
Yep. And as someone coming from that world, I absolutely am aligned with that. Like I said, this Count enables the deep work, right? These to me are the real jobs to be done. And the reality is that if you fix these, you'll never have to answer the question, what are you guys doing? Like, what are we paying money for, right? So, okay, time is not our friend. Let's jump right into it. So let's talk quickly about the 4 tenets of high impact teams, and let's make sure that we kind of address those one-to-one issues that you had before, so that we're solutioning right now.
Cool. Yeah, love it. Well, let me start with the first one, which is an unlock to the rest of it. Actually, it's often the place we see a lot of our customers or just data teams getting into this mode, focusing on, and it's called it's seeking operational clarity. Now, what is operational clarity? So opposed to the idea of drowning the business with information, just giving out assets and building dashboards willy-nilly, the goal of a data team should be to create the maximum amount of clarity for the organization with the minimum amount of information possible. That you're creating what I would say from an engineering background is like the signal to noise ratio is incredibly high. So
Yep.
We're in a world now where every single piece of software, every single tool that anyone in the business has gives you numbers and metrics and data. We're not lacking data anymore. We're lacking clarity about what's really going on. So a data team's purpose is now to clarify and simplify the operating model of a business. They're the ones making it clear what the business is doing, how it's performing, how the business fits together, painting the operating model of the business, not just painting the data or owning the numbers. And that's a crucial role, which makes everything else easier. You're making the business feel simple.
I would say it's almost like data teams need a COO, but we're out of time, so continue.
No, it's that simple. I mean, so an example of that could be, the data team should be producing things like metric trees or making process flow maps with metrics attached to it. That's what we see a lot of our customers doing, just to position and contextualize the metrics that matter and painting the story of the business, visualizing the business, not just visualizing the data itself. And that's the big leap forward. Is that kind of like, we are going to make the business, paint the business and how the business fits together, not just how the numbers, what the numbers are. And it's amazing. It sounds so simple, it sounds so obvious, but you can never make the business feel clear enough. Like, you can always make it simpler. And it's amazing the stories we know of, there's been so many examples of this, I can't tell you, but we saw one customer who they were doing a POC with us, and they built in a few days, built a metric tree of they're a fast-growing SaaS company, right? Fast-growing SaaS company. Mm-hmm. And their junior analyst built a metric tree, a very, very basic metric tree of the core metrics of the business, put them into a tree so you can see the hierarchy of the different parts of the business, brought it to the company all hands with 250, I think it was, employees, presented it, and there was just silence as people were like, oh yeah, that's what our business looks like. That's what's going on. And that's a trivial example, but it's just so powerful. If the data team is the one bringing that signal, that kind of clarity about what's happening, what matters, that's just going to help everyone at every level to understand their role and understand what's really important.
Yeah, and I know we're short on time, but I just want to show quickly. Can we bring up the metric tree on the screen? It's one of my favorite canvases. I'm a little bit biased here. I'm a visual dashboard. I love dashboard. Can we bring that up?
I will try and get it up. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, no, I have it. So this is, I'm known for the data dictionary, which was first a KPI blueprint. So I love metrics. I know it's weird, it's geeky. I love metrics. And so when I first saw this, Ollie, on there, what I love about it is that, typically we have a metric sheet, it's just words. Even my own, right, is really just words. Here you have not just the context, but you have the charts to go with it, right? So it's like a visual metric tree. And this is a template that you can download, right?
Totally. And just to clarify, this is the build environment. So this is a
Yep.
place that analysts can build it out. It's not necessarily the way you report this. This has got the code, the definitions, and
Correct.
there's a bit of SQL in here. But if you can absolutely make this into a report that you can send around your whole company, which
Yep.
shows just metrics in context and shows that tree really, really clearly. So we're looking
Yep.
here from like the analyst perspective, and that's another whole powerful environment. But
Yep.
yeah, 100%. It's a very it's a great way to do it. Now, I
Yeah.
also want to say for people who can't buy count today, you can absolutely drive operational clarity with a dashboard tool. It's just about how you do that is trickier and harder, but you can absolutely do things to improve
Yes.
clarity and signal. Most of that could be just clearing out all the old conflicting assets that are just driving confusion and get to the
Yep.
minimum number of reports you can, which lets the business operate. Like that's the key idea
Yep.
is minimize the amount of places that you've got to go to understand business performance. And that is possible in other tools. It's harder, but it's definitely possible. And that's why the principles are universally acceptable and you could adopt them today.
Okay, and we're a little bit over time, but it's important that we get through the next three. So can you, I think, I seek an operational clarity, just to be clear, the reason you spend so much time on that is that my understanding is that if you fix that, a lot of the rest of it is kind of will trickle down, right? It's kind of like the
Exactly.
snowball effect,
It's like
right?
the virtuous cycle rather than the vicious cycle of pumping data and
I love
assets
that.
into business to confuse them. The more you pump in clarity, which means
Yes.
less assets, basically, the better the
Yes.
questions, the better informed the business is, and the better they're
I love that.
using you to ask questions. So a key idea here is back to the second tenet of solving business problems is a
Mhm.
large number of the ad hoc requests the data team receive is not actually about solving problems. It's about understanding what's going on. So instantly, if you
Right.
give clarity, you're
I
dropping the
agree.
amount of requests you're getting, and you're getting a higher proportion of I want to solve this problem. Help me,
I
please. And
agree.
that's where the data team can then drive value. So the second tenant, solving business problems, as I said, this is probably not a surprising tenant to many
Mhm.
data people. They want to solve business problems. They want to get stuck in there. The big lift is understanding that the better you're clear of operational clarity perspective, the easier this is to do. And the second big leap is to recognize that the data team can do more to own the problem solve, right? So rather than just answering questions the business asks of you, where the problem solve structuring is in some stakeholder's head and you can't see it and they're not necessarily clear because they've got a million things to do, the more the data team can take ownership of the problem, structure it for the business, help them understand it again, clarity again, and then get to an answer and to facilitate the problem solve and the structuring of that problem, not just
Yeah.
be the answers that they ask without understanding why. That's a huge lift to the business. You're then
So Ollie,
helping the business
question for
actually
you.
problem solve, not just being a data dump. Yeah.
So we're a little bit over time here, but just bear with us because this is so important. So one of the things with this that I want to ask you is you're always going to get questions. Are you now saying that you need to be aware that those questions are going from just asking, just seeking clarity versus solving problems? Like you can actually draw a line on the type of questions you're getting, and you need to look at those two buckets and say, okay, we're no longer just being asked, clarify this or help me. These are actual problems that we're solving. So you're saying that is a clear line, and if you start paying attention, you can actually track that.
Yeah, exactly. I
Question
also
type.
you question type can so the operational clarity
Yeah.
allows the question type that you're getting to improve in quality because they are now asking questions now they understand what's going on. They're asking better
Yes.
quality questions. They might still be exploratory,
Educated.
but it's just now much more targeted, much more
Yes.
informed. The data team understands more what they're talking about, what they're trying to go after. And that allows the data team to take more ownership or lean in more to be like, what is it? Let me help you understand what's going on here. Let me help you structure this problem you're tackling in a way which makes sense to you. And another way of
Yes.
thinking about this, just if you think about the an executive, I guess myself now increasingly, I can tell you that I get given information from all over the place, my inbox, my SaaS tools, from the different parts of the team, solving problems at different levels of detail, like from the highest level down to the lowest level. And that's true for every leader. Everyone in the business actually is dealing with information at different levels of detail. The idea that they have space to like load that information into their brain, into their RAM, in their mind, and get to a good answer, good problem solve is
Yeah.
unlikely. The more a data team can help an executive, a stakeholder, structured their thinking, lay it out in a way which helps them grasp not just the numbers or
I
the
agree.
data, but actually how it all fits together and make the jigsaw itself. That's so valuable because the cognitive load is being
I agree.
taken off someone's head when they're just in Slack
Yes,
or when they're just on an email, that you're actually taking the cognitive load away from them and they're going to value that more and see the problem solving capability of the data team. Like there's so many people, so many graduates who are like have STEM degrees who go into data are nowhere close to being utilized fully. Now, wonderfully, there's many more people in data than they're not in STEM, but the key is that there's a huge, you have to be such a good problem solver to be in data to do what you do, but you're not, they get the team, the wider team to recognize that and use you that way is such an important thing. And it's about taking on the structuring the problem, the methodology of the problem solve, not just to giving the numbers out. That's the key lift there, which is helped by operational clarity.
okay. And then number 3 is, I think again, this is all kind of going hand in hand, right? We kind of going down
Totally.
the snowball hill. Okay, so
Yeah.
solving business problems, again, just to recap, if you are transitioning from a service team into a high impact team, you can literally divide the line between the type of questions if you're doing this right. You're going from basic clarification questions, transforming into data informed questions that are more well educated, more focused on solving a problem. Okay.
Yeah.
Now the third tenet, because we're short on time, is minimizing the time to decision. And I believe where this is leading is that if you get your operational clarity correct and understand the operational model, right, which I think Kong should provide training on, different story, you then are now seeing the transformation of your questions. You no longer essentially have to run from the business.
Yeah.
Like that's
That
right.
that that's right. I mean, you can tackle these in any order. Like every team often has one of these as a bottleneck to them.
Yeah.
But you're right. That's the normal order we see. Like tackling like 1 to 3, 4. The key idea of minimizing time to the decision is rather than moving away from the business yourself, minimizing your time to stakeholders. Your goal as a data team is to work on the processes themselves that are driving decisions and leaning in
Yes.
and looking at going, well, how do I help make this decision making process better? Not just provide the data to it, but actually help the business think through that decision making process. So a very, very common thing for a data team to think about is self-service. Okay, self-service. How do I
Yes.
help the business answer more questions themselves? Now, that is a piece of the puzzle, undeniably. How to help the business answer quick questions for themselves to operationally make decisions as on a fast cadence is a really important part of that puzzle. But there's so many
Yeah.
other decisions that are going on in a business, from the most strategic at a board meeting all the way down to things you can even automate away with AI. And a goal of a
Yes.
data team is to look at the spectrum of different decision types from the operational up to strategic and help make all of those decision making processes faster, not just throwing in self-serve and hoping that's enough. And that's
Okay.
about looking at the distribution of work and working out where to put your effort and time to make things faster and easy for the business.
Okay, Ollie, we have 2 minutes. So I'm gonna take the liberty here. Because I want to make sure that we get to the calls to actions at the end. People know where to find this
Sure.
stuff. It's important. I think measuring itself, I hope to some extent is self-explanatory. You can't manage what you don't measure. So, I would
Well,
hope that after you do all of this, you're open into measuring yourself and seeing how you're doing.
100%. So the key idea here, which I think is really important, rather than optimizing
Sorry.
things the business can't see, the
Yeah.
recognition is that the majority of the cost of a data team is in its people and in the payroll of those people, not in your server costs.
That's
There
right.
may be some fringe organizations where that's opposite, but majority of the time, the biggest cost of the business is where you're allocating your team's time. And so the most important
Yes.
idea here is that you're working on putting your people on the problems that matter most to the business and putting effort there. And if you can justify that allocation of time, then you're in a very good place for driving ROI. And that is
Okay.
not about. There you go.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Oli. I think this has been amazing. We went a bit over, but we have a few seconds left.
If
I
you
just
get
want to
me
make
talking, I'm going to talk a lot. Very passionate,
I
as you
think it
said.
was great. And I actually think for those who are listening, the More Than Life audience, people are going to want more. So let's make sure that they know where to find more. So the good thing is that the entire More Than Numbers live series is focused on customers and people in the industry who are implementing one or all of these tenets. So if you're sitting here going, well, Oli, how do I do this? No. This entire show, go in and subscribe. Let's get those links on the screen. First of all, you can go and subscribe to count.co/MTN. and you will be the first to hear about every show. You'll get all the show notes. There's free downloads, and there's an entire community. Okay, so you guys you're joining a thriving community. Yes, Count has a Canvas tool, but More Than Numbers is a movement. So make sure you guys get in there and get these show notes and go back and listen to some of the shows. That's number one. The second thing is that we're giving them access to the tenant site, are we not?
Yeah, you can get the tenants straight away.
Correct. So if you guys want to go, and we'll put these in the comments as well, you can hop the count.co/tenants, and you can actually access what Ollie was just showing, and you can get in there, screenshot it, play with it within the canvas, and you guys have access to take that and go forward. Now, I want to say, Ollie, I'm thinking that there's a training coming here. I feel like there should be a training, but I won't put you on the spot live. But we got to wrap up here. Ollie, this has been amazing. I have enjoyed this. You know, me and you can go on all day. We're data geeks, but I think more than the audience has gained a lot of knowledge here. So thank you for being a guest today. Thank you for being in a hot seat, and thank you for sharing your knowledge and passion.
Well, thanks for being our first guest host. It's been you've done as well. Thank you so much for being here. It's been awesome.
Yeah, this was great. So guys, get in there, subscribe, and I forgot, you can also follow Ollie Hughes. Look up Oliver Hughes. It's his first name on LinkedIn. He is posting every day. He's posting knowledge bombs for you guys on how this thinking works. So make sure that you guys also follow his profile as well as the Count LinkedIn page. Okay, you guys are awesome. Ollie, thank you for having me. And guys, be sure to check out next episode. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.